Good evening, mi gente. This is Ray Collazo, and you're watching and listening to the Founded Translation Bomba Live Crossover Edition. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate my live listeners watching on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and across all our social media channels, as well as the folks that'll see this later on as on a replay or on YouTube. And of course, our radio listeners on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. on WPPMLP 106.5 FM in the city that loves you back, Philadelphia, the city that birthed me at Albert Einstein Hospital. Who would think I would be so, polarizing contrasts in relation to the hospital I was born in. Thank you again so much for joining us. And again, of course, our Ride or Dies, our podcast listeners, always with us, 7.5 years strong, podcasting, Found in Translation, the show that stacks truth about politics and today's hottest issues, and Bomba Live, the virtual Puerto Rican celebration. Later on in the show, we're going to have great contributors to the show, Dionely, Reyes, and Tania, Valencia, to talk about what else are you Latinos doing on the weekends and sneaking in between work and before you go to bed. The Selena Netflix series. Talk about a polarizing conversation. That's going to be interesting. And I'll give you some political updates. I mean, we'll get in a little bit about the latest goings on of the first person ever to have a Spanish language album on the top of the Billboard charts. Of course, I'm referring to Don Benito himself, Bad Bunny. Maybe we'll have some thoughts about him later in the show. So Selena, Bad Bunny, the politics. But first, we have hit, my friends, unfortunately, over 200 cases a day of the COVID-19 illness. Close to 3,000 deaths a day. I think yesterday we had over 3,000 deaths. So we are basically experiencing, family, a 9/11 type catastrophe, tragedy in our country every day. Many of us would say unnecessarily, especially 10 months in. And one of the things that we want to emphasize to our people is that this is real and real people are being impacted. And so when this great friend of ours, frequent guest to the show, one of the great Latino voices in social media and online content, reached out to me and said, I think it's important for the Founding Translation Bomba Live community to hear the truth about this scourge. I said, of course, our doors are always open. Let's say, un gran saludo, a great friend, and partly the inspiration for this platform, George Torres, a.k.a. the Urban Jibaro.
Hey.
Buenas noches, hermano.
¿Qué pasa, pai? ¿Cómo está?
It's good to see you, brother. First of all, I know for your friends, your social media family especially, well, everyone's social media now because we hardly get to see each other. We're just happy to see you healthy and happy, brother, because you not only were very giving in sharing what you were going through, but we were all going through it too, worried about you, brother. So first of all, good to see you healthy. Good to see you happy with a smile on your face. Some good salsa music in the background. So that's the first thing, my friend. So you wanted to come on because you wanted to not only share your story, but you wanted to really educate our people about what this really means. So let's just get right into it. Again, I'm sure we'll chat later about some other fun topics, and you're always on the pulse of what's going on in our community, especially through social media. But George Urban Jibaro Torres, tell us your COVID-19 journey began.
So a lot of people don't know, but I took earlier this year, I took a sabbatical so that I could write the book about my career. I've been in the digital media space for over 23 years, founder of the first Latino website on the internet. And I've always been frustrated with the fact that we didn't have a platform to tell our stories. So I'm continuously building different platforms and conferences so that we could have space to exist and thrive, right? As a part of my journey, I decided that I was going to be adventurous and become a flight attendant. So I've been a flight attendant now for about a year and a little bit over a year and a half, going on 2 years. So obviously when COVID hit, it hits right at the peak of my newfound career. And I'm probably in one of the craziest places to be during this whole pandemic. But I continue working through it. Got recognized by People magazine, People en Español, as one of the 50 más bellos for working through COVID. They had a piece called Beautiful Heroes, and they recognized me representing my airline. But I was very careful for the majority of the time that I was working. Hey, Jamarla. One of the things is that we get what I believe is called like pandemic fatigue, you know. And during the time that just a couple of weeks ago, 2 months ago, I was with some friends who I thought would, you know, are in the same industry, and we kind of got together and we let our guard down. And it's the first time I've done so in the whole time that I was quarantining and sheltering in place in between work shifts and whatnot. And unfortunately, I got COVID. And When I got COVID, when I got my diagnosis, I went and got a rapid test. And when I got my test results, I was scared. My living situation is very fluid because since I travel so much, it doesn't really pay for me to have a full-time apartment. At least it didn't then. Now I'm changing my mind now. But I I live in what's called a crash pad. You know, when I'm in New York, we're getting ready for work, and the crash pad is basically like, think about like housing or dormitory, a college dorm for flight attendants and pilots. So it wasn't safe for me to go back to the crash pad because my colleagues would be infected or be exposed anyway to what I had. So my friend Cynthia, actually, I called her, try to see if I could stay at her place and whatnot. And, you know, that wasn't an option, unfortunately. And it wasn't a comfortable option for me to get to. So she actually told me about 311. 311 is a resource center that we have in New York. It's a hotline that we have in New York where you could call and just get access to all different types of city programs. And when I called 311, they put me in touch with an organization called the Test and Trace Corps. And they're actually part of New York City's health and hospitals. And when I got in touch with them, they immediately worked it out so they can pick me up and take me to a hotel, which they repurposed as a COVID quarantine center for people who couldn't shelter in place safely. So I went into the hospital system, not the hospital system, to the hotel system, so that I could get 3 meals a day, get wellness checks, and make sure that I was safe. Not only keeping myself safe, but keeping people around me and people that I love safe. So that's how it all started, really.
Wow, we're talking to George Jibaro Torres about his COVID-19 journey. So I would imagine, George, there's so many steps in his journey, even, you know, in a relatively short period of time, because you not only go from not having COVID to having COVID, but go from an industry and your personal style about wanting to engage people. I mean, this is what you do for a living, right? Offline and online, right?
Yep.
So I would imagine that being a phase that was very isolating.
Yeah.
And then you went from that hotel situation, I would imagine, into a hospital because from what I understand, it got worse.
Yeah. So they put me into hotels in a hotel system because my symptoms were mild at first. But one of the most dangerous symptoms that you could have is the loss of oxygen. You know, not being able to breathe on your own. So during one of my wellness checks on the 6th day I was in the hotel, they came to do a wellness check and I didn't answer the door. So they came into the room and they found me unresponsive, and they called the ambulance and took me over to the hospital. My oxygen level was in the 80s, which is pretty bad. It's a state they call hypoxia, where you're lacking oxygen in the brain, and it could lead to, obviously, you know, passing out and not getting up ever again. So they took me to the hospital. I spent 13 days in the hospital. But one of the most amazing things about the Test and Trace Corps, which is the organization that runs the program, the hotel program that I was in, is that they also have they're the Test and Trace Corps, right? So what they do is they have a way to be able to get in touch with all the people that you potentially have exposed and offer them resources, testing centers, hotel situations like mine, and other resources for them to get through the COVID-19 situation. So when every day that I was in the every day I was in the hotel to the hospital, they would reach out to me every day, ask me what my symptoms are, ask me if I'm getting good care. And they would just kind of follow up with me every single day, let me know that they're keeping track of my progress, and letting me know that if there's any resources I need after the fact, that they would be able to provide those as well. So they were very, very helpful in making sure that I was reassured that somebody out there was listening and looking out for me. So very excited about like the opportunity now to partner with them and to be able to let people know, especially in New York City, because this is a New York City program, let people know that this program exists, that it's available, so that they could not only test often, but also if they do happen to come down positive with the COVID virus, that they have options, you know, to make sure that they keep their family and loved ones safe. So,
You know, George, because I know people are thinking there's I mean, the reactions, I mean, I can feel people glued to this conversation, brother, because your story is so compelling and it's so scary. Young man, and so many people know you for your vitality and how much energy you have with everything you do from your flight, all your careers. You know, I would imagine, and we were going through something. I didn't have it. While you were in the hospital with COVID, I had pneumonia.
okay.
So, and I dealt with it for about a month, and that's another story for another day. But, you know, even though that was a much minor version of what you were going through, still really scary, because you have a couple of nights where you wake up in the middle of the night and breathing, and, you know, it's scary. So your chest feels a certain way, but I didn't have COVID, thank God. So I would imagine I was going through this, that while you're in the hospital and you're going through this situation, especially you have a lot of time to think. I mean, what are you thinking about? I mean, there's got to be on some level of reflection. And I would imagine on some level, because I did this when I was going through my worst 2 or 3 days with pneumonia, you start thinking about, well, you know, this was a good run either way. You know, you start kind of coming to grips with your mortality.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that experience.
Well, I mentioned it, and I won't get into it, but 10 years ago, I had almost fatal bout with pneumonia. That was like a really rare pneumonia that's attributed to like a desert rodent, and it was just so random how I got it. But I spent a good month and a half in the hospital, and it took me 3 months to recover from that. So believe it or not, that was actually much worse than what I just went through now. But I was also 360 pounds back then. So I wasn't living healthy. So there was a lot of other factors. I think that the changes I made in my lifestyle have put me in a better position to be able to fight this. So my survival was probably that was probably a critical piece of my survival this time around. But one of the things that I thought about the most is because obviously we have the gateway to the world in our hands, right? So I'm looking on Facebook, and I'm not really talking to anybody because I'm semi-embarrassed that I even caught COVID. And, you know, but I see all my friends out there, like, you know, partying and getting together with people in the barbecues, and I'm seeing like all these different, you know, gatherings, and I just want to warn people. So I start like reaching out to people personally to say, hey, listen, I'm in the hospital right now. This is what I'm going through. Just be careful, like wear your mask, and here's some information about testing sites. So if you're going to get together with your family during the holidays, make sure that you get tested first. Like, you know, I was just being like big brother, big uncle, you know, trying to let everybody know what's going on. But once it got out that I was actually sick was probably when I was in the hospital already. That's when I actually told people. So I went through a whole week being completely isolated by myself, with just some very close friends and family reaching out to me and helping me out and bringing me care packages, because the hotel doesn't allow visitors, obviously. But one of the things that really impacted me the most was the support from the community. You know, the support from the community, people reaching out to me. I had people pray for me, all different religions. I had people doing Reiki, long distance Reiki for me, you know, prendiendo velas, you know, you name it, you know, people. So people were really, you know, there was a lot of people that were really looking out for me. Also, at the same time, a couple of people close to me were also battling it. And one such person just recently lost his battle, and that's Kenny Ortega. Comedian Kenny Ortega just
did he?
Yeah, he passed away.
Oh, that's terrible news. I had no idea.
So we pretty much went into the hospital around the same time, and he got intubated, and he fought hard, but unfortunately he passed away a couple of days ago.
I remember him from our young boy days, man, in New York. I remember him. Yeah, we hung out once or twice.
Yeah, I used to.
Talented cat, man. Talented cat.
Yeah, he's very talented, very, very well loved, and you know, it's just a. I heard a lot of people say that was the day that Funny died, you know, because he was such a funny individual, and so you know, so we have those situations, right? I'm seeing other people going through it with me. The most impactful thing is to be in the hospital and just watch every person that's around you that has the same, disease just die. Like that's probably the most impactful thing that I took away from the hospital, is just like literally being there and just watching people pass away one by one, So it's a serious thing. I mean, I don't want to get into the morbidity of everything. I think we're all pretty aware of how this is impacting life and across the world. But the most important thing I think I need to let people know, especially now, the holidays are coming. Everybody wants to be with their loved ones, especially after the last 9 months that we've been through. But being with your loved ones right now, it really like, you have to be responsible. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with you spending time with your family right now, and you have to think about not only the people that you love, but the people that they also love. It's a domino effect. Unfortunately, you infect one person, that person could affect 20 people, and 20 people could affect 100 people, and that's how we got where we are right now.
Exactly.
So the message here is very clear. It's get tested often, especially if you're going to be around families. But if you could avoid that, es mejor estar 6 pies separado que 6 pies abajo de la tierra,
Seguro que sí.
So I'm just telling people about the program. The program's website is nyc.gov/COVID test, and that's the resource center where you can get all the information about free testing sites all over New York City. And then you also can call 212 COVID-19 is a phone number for you to call. And just get tested, man. Just get tested. Know your status. Know how you could impact the people that you love, because you could have, that's the other thing too. You could have no symptoms at all and still get people sick and spread it. So it's really serious. So I'm hoping that people will take this message and actually carry it forward to the people that they love, especially those in New York. Because this is, like I said, is a New York program. But I would encourage you that if you're not in New York, that you look to your local government and your local representatives to find out what kind of programs they have in place, because, as you know, almost everybody is mobilized to make sure that we could fight this thing.
Well, thank God you were in New York, bro, because you might have, if you had been, you're flying around all over the place. You might have been in a community that didn't have these kind of resources.
Yeah.
One of these red states that's not taking it serious. I think I saw someone, it's like 1 in 3 people in the Dakotas have it now. I mean, it's just ridiculous how some of these states have just ignored the problem. We're talking to George Urban Jibaro Torres, a great friend from our activism days when I was in college in New York. He's a real New Yorker. I'm a Philly guy that just faking it for a few years. But we were doing, George, we met. It's so interesting because we met doing social justice work around police brutality issues.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a huge part of your personal story, which I'm sure will be detailed in your book and your memoirs. But when you started sharing on social media, it rocked so many of us, bro.
Yeah.
And I just wanted you to have an opportunity to share, what was that experience like, sharing, but also getting the feedback from, because you get love everywhere, man, all over the country, all over the world,
I always get love from the community. I never complain, but sometimes when you're moving so fast and you're doing the daily hustle, so to speak, sometimes you don't get an opportunity to sit down and really read everything in depth and really appreciate it for what it is. And I'm gonna tell you right now that, I mean, I've always been pretty engaged with my community, but I went from writing like 1-line or 2-line answers to people that DM me to writing paragraphs, because I just feel overwhelmed with the love and the cariño that they've given me. And there's so many people that really like not only care, but care to the point where I'll drive from Philly. Somebody drove from Philly to bring me a care package. I had somebody that send me books, on how to get healthier. I have people who try to donate cash so I could eat better, so I can get healthier food. So it's like it's and then I had like my closest circle, which were just like right there. They couldn't be with me, but they made sure they touch base with me every single day. I even had my friend Emily make believe she was an Uber driver and like deliver like supplies to me, because they only let you get one real care package at the hotel the first day, and then after that you could only get like ordered food or whatever. But she was like smuggling stuff in for me. My friend Betsy, who drove me home from the hospital, and these were people like, even though they knew I was sick with COVID and whatnot, they they didn't care. They came to visit me. They tried to visit me. They put on they put on the all the PPE and came in to see me the last couple of days I was in the
Wow.
hospital. So I mean, it's really dope. Thank you,
Uh,
Jamala.
Jamala, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Giving George a lot of love here on the chat. George is so loved by the community. He's one of the most vocal, influential voices for Latinos. There's no question about it. George, I want to. I'll make sure you certainly will have an opportunity to share any final thoughts on your COVID story, bro. And and you've been so generous in other podcasts, and I'm sure you're going to be producing other content as you already have, to get more in depth on this. But I did want to just try to lighten it up a little bit because, before this took place, you're living your best life, man. Not only touring, traveling the Americas with your day gig, but continuing to educate people, elevate our voices through the arts and through teaching people how to utilize these tools. So just just any thoughts, anything you wanted to share about that part of your journey as we end 2020?
Yeah, there's a couple of different things that I just wanted to let people know. I have an initiative called Siembra that was born right in the middle, like right in the beginning of COVID. And basically what I did was I opened up my company's doors to 145 small businesses that were looking to pivot during COVID. And I've been giving them free social media marketing advice in this closed Facebook group. And I have since grown that into a VIP class where 16 people are currently in a cohort with me. Siembra Initiative is going to be doing some special events like my 3 words, which I do every year. It's a workshop where you set the intention for the new year. And I think it's super important right now for us to set intentions and figure out how we're going to survive this next year of what's going to promise to be challenging as well. The second thing I want to announce, and I haven't said this anywhere, this is a Bomba Live moment right now.
Woo!
Is that on December 16th, the first Poetic Verses is going to happen. So we have a Capicu, my cultural showcase in Brooklyn that I co-founded with Papo Swiggity, is going to host online verses with Caridad de la Luz La Bruja versus Bonafide Rojas, both of them alumni from Def Poetry Jam. So this is going to be an event that you do not want to miss. This is Latino excellence at its finest.
No doubt.
I have not seen anywhere online where they've done poetry verses. It's all been music and other genres. But
what date is that again, George? The 16th?
It's Wednesday, December 16th at 8 o'clock on Daily Sofrito on Facebook, which is our Facebook page, on Capicu Culture. So yeah, definitely want to invite everybody to come and join us for that, because
that is an exclusive.
It's an exclusive. It's historical, and it's 2 people whose work I absolutely adore. And it's a showing of love and cultural understanding. It's not competition really. It's just them both showcasing some of the best that they've done. So,
well, last week we honored Miguel Algarin on the show and had our great friend Karen Jaime, a fellow poet as well, and showed her a lot of showed Miguel and all our New York. It was really an ode to the Nuyorican poetry movement that you've really carried the torch on as well with your platforms. I wanted to bring on a guest that's going to talk about Selena and some other topics in a minute. But no, she's going to join you. She had a question for you, brother.
Okay, so just so you know, the Poetic Verses is actually verses, as in poet, like verse, like a verse.
Okay, well, I'm just kind of scribbling along here.
I just want to make sure I don't get sued.
No, that's true. Yeah, so we'll get to it. But let's bring on. Let me correct that so that George doesn't have any legal issues. Let's bring on a great friend to the show, kind of the voice of the millennial generation here, and one of my favorite Salvies, Tania Valencia. Welcome back to Bomba Live, my friend.
Hey, glad to be here. I'm so glad that you brought up this, all these events that you're doing, because I like to joke with people that I might be a policy nerd, policy writer by day, but by night I'm a poet. So
nice.
Anyways, I'm super excited to hear.
You need to connect with George. You need to connect with George. Tania, you wanted to jump on a few minutes for the Selena segment because and you may have I'm sure you have some thoughts about just George's sharing his story, but also you had some stats and some thoughts about the big picture and how this issue is impacting everybody. We got love for everybody. We don't want to know in a sec, but it's just proportionally impacting the Latino community.
Yeah. So as I was saying, I'm a data junkie, former educator myself. I used to teach 4th grade English language arts in DC. And so my job is to find the numbers, the stats, the facts that help us paint a picture of what our lives look like. And George, thank you for sharing your story. I'm very, very humbled. And I'm so grateful that you're here and that you're alive, first and foremost.
Tell me about it.
And I do want to take a moment, again, as a former educator, to bring a little bit of those stories in terms of how this is impacting children as well across the country. And one of those things is about how a lot of households right now are experiencing food insecurity in the middle of this pandemic. And according to what we know, it is about 42% at least that we know of Latino households that might be experiencing some sort of food insecurity right now during this crisis. So that is about 4 in every 10 Latino children, which is absolutely far too much. And I think about my own story, and it even chokes me up to even share some of this, because I remember being a kid and I would come home from school hungry as hell because I was, just going about my day, right? And we were open the fridge and there was nothing. And when we did eat, it was always beans or frijoles, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner frijoles. Even to this day, I love frijoles because that's what we did have. And I think about what it means for those households and those kids that are going through that right now in this pandemic. And to add the layer of education, there's also about 16.9 million children across the entire country that don't have internet access at home right now. And they're not able to access their learning. And I think about this too. As a kid myself, I didn't have internet. If we could barely afford food, we definitely could not afford internet. And I would sneak out of the house. I would try to get as close as possible to my neighbor. And I would try to, get whatever little signal Wi-Fi I could from my neighbor. My mom was a single mom, and Wi-Fi just wasn't a commodity that we could have. So again, I'm thinking about those kids as they are living through this pandemic, and that I know I would absolutely be one of those 16.9 million kids if I were to be living through the pandemic right now as a child. And we know that parents and adults, need support, economic support, and our Congress really needs to take an eye to this. That it is not just about helping, the households and the adults per se, but they really need to take a look at how this is impacting directly the children across the country as well. And in the Latino community, specifically, the national rate of uninsured children was about 9% before the pandemic. And almost half of Latino children have one or more underlying medical condition. So this is literally in my family. My little cousin has asthma, and we think about him all the time. He lives in the same house as my grandma, and we had to think about how we can keep them too safe. And for that, I haven't seen my family since probably like June. And I used to spend every weekend with them, and that's how we're keeping them safe. And it hurts and it's hard.
Oh my God.
That's how we're keeping them safe.
I miss so many people that I don't get to see, or, at a distance. It's one thing to see them. It's one thing to hug them and, people, have that connection. George, you're also connected education, and Mala's mentioning that you've been speaking out on this issue as well. So just any thoughts on the education piece of COVID-19? Anything else you wanted to share? Because I know your time's limited with our Bomba Live Found in Translation community.
Yeah, no, we continue. We had a couple of sessions with Siembra about the disparities in online, access for kids and everything. I think it's something that we're going to look at. I'm shifting gears to have conversations where we could actually have solutions. I don't want to just do a show to talk about the problem that we're already aware of, the numbers that we already know, the things that we see flashed on the screen every day on any one of the channels that are producing news 24/7. So I like to pivot into a space where we're actually coming up with solutions. This being one of them, like, me having COVID and now being able to be a voice to let New Yorkers know that they have options to get tested, that for free, not for free, at no cost to them, really. That they have their safe methods to getting tested, that they have options all over the city, and that they have options if they do test positive to be safe. So everything that I do from this point on is going to be very, very solution oriented, or I'm going to bring in the right people to have the conversation. It's not a conversation. I can't have every conversation, right? but I could definitely partner with people like you and Tanya to be able to have these conversations, but produce solutions, even if it's for a small group of people on a micro level. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. So anything that I do from this point forward, just expect it to be pivoting towards solutions as opposed to just rhetoric and talk.
Well, George, let me tell you something, brother. I love you, brother. Our journeys have been very much parallel. And look, the reality is our generation of urban Puerto Rican men that had the blessings to be connected to some of the educational and networking opportunities we had and are in this space. We're not falling off trees from our crowd. Let's be honest about it. And so, I've always supported you from afar, and you've done the same for me, man. So I care about you as a brother. That's the first thing. I'm just glad you're safe, bro. Real talk, because I was scared for you, man. And at the same time, I was kind of scared for myself with what was going on. So it was kind of a mirrors thing. And so it meant a lot to me that you're safe now and that you're able to come on the show. And so you're gonna be with us a long time, brother. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Let us know, again, how people can access those resources and anything else you want to share with the fam.
So if you want to get tested in New York City, just go to nyc.gov/COVID test. It's bilingual. It's a bilingual website. So you could actually get resources both in English and Spanish, or you can call 212-COVID-19. And those are the main two resources where you can get in touch with the Test and Trace Corps of New York, which is a city-funded program to make sure that, you have options if this thing touches you or your family or your loved ones in any way. So thank you again, Ray. Thank you, Tanya.
Appreciate you, brother.
Tanya, I'll be in touch.
Oh no, I'll definitely connect y'all. No question about it. We're gonna transition into our next segment. I'm actually gonna play a few videos. I don't know if you've checked out these young boys from Puerto Rico, George. Dionely Axel are the YouTube sensations from Puerto Rico. These little kids are so adorable. They have these really funny, entertaining videos with also some very subtle and not so subtle political messaging. Much respect to their father, Jesus, that does these videos with them. So we're gonna watch a couple of these adorable videos and get back and have a conversation about what else. The Latina queen herself, Selena, the Netflix series, which is all the rage on Latina social media.
Anything for Salinas.
No question about it. Talk to you soon, brother.
Bye-bye.
Vamos a empezar de nuevo. ¿Cuánto es 2 más 2?
No sé.
¿Cómo se llama esto?
Eso es un 4.
Así que 2 más 2 es igual a... Vamos a tratar de esta manera. Aquí hay 2 galletas y en el plato hay 2 galletas. Si muevo estas 2 galletas al plato, ¿cuántas galletas hay en el plato? Axel.
Galletas.
Axel, ¿cuántas galletas hay en el plato?
¿Ese plato no tiene nada? ¿Qué tiene un avión? Cael, ahí está llegando un avión.
Pues vamos, vamos. Hola, bienvenido a Puerto Rico.
Welcome to Puerto Rico.
¡Todo Puerto Rico!
Turista, bienvenido a Puerto Rico. Tenemos las mejores playas, tenemos buena música y también tenemos buena comida.
Y también tenemos coronavirus.
Unbelievable. I tell you, these children, they're so adorable. Thank you, Dionely Axel. I know George is like, I gotta collaborate with these young boys. They are something else. No question about it. Much respect again to Jesus, their father, who's just a wonderful father. And we enjoyed having them on the show. We're going to have them back. They're so adorable. So look, fam, one of the things I try to pride myself on this show, and I ain't as young as I used to be. Let's keep it real. I'm not as cool as I used to be. I used to be really cool. I used to be able to dance and do all kind of cool stuff. Not as cool as I used to be. But one of the things is I keep my ear to the street. And I know what y'all are talking about out there for the last week. And it's clearly about the Netflix series that has, especially the Latina community, with some very provocative conversations about how they feel about it, about the queen course, I talk about Selena Quintanilla Perez. So who else but two queens from the Bomba Live Found Translation family talk about this very provocative conversation about the Netflix series and what it means for the legacy of our queens. Of course, the Dominican queen of TikTok. Some would say like the Dominican Selena in some quarters. The host of Aprendiz Live podcast and a great collaborator on the show, Dionely Reyes. The Dominican queen is back.
Hi, my love.
What's going on, girl? What's going on?
The screen was gonna be so wide.
What?
Hey, everybody.
What's going on? Well, you go. Let's go straight in a second. Was you get the third guest with Dionely? You know, I'm so appreciative. First of all, it's so great to see you. It's always too long when you're not on the show. But before we introduce our other guest, I just wanted to share that I really appreciate the fact that, you know, there's a lot of people that talk like yik yak on social media about Selena. And when I put the call out to come on the show, a lot of scaredy cats out there because it could be a sensitive and provocative topic. So I'm glad, Dionely, you stepped up to
I'm ready.
talk about your queen, girl.
By the way, did you call me the Dominican Selena?
Well, you know, that's I've seen it on social media. I'm just repeating some of your monikers. You know what I'm saying?
Way, you know how on social media I'm Dionely ETC? The ETC is because Selena, her hair salon and boutique was Selena ETC. So that's where I got it from. That's how much of a fan I am. And behind me, I have the perfume that she used to wear. I'm not going to say the brand, but this is the actual perfume she used to wear. Not the actual perfume, but the brand.
We're going to get into this. You know, your fandom is quite interesting. Let's get into it. Let's bring back Tania into this conversation. Tania Valencia. Tania, you know what I was thinking about it, my friend? Well, we'll get into it when that what's so interesting about this conversation is that this really, and again, I'm not trying to, rough here. We're all closer in age than, but this is kind of like 3 generations of Selena fans having this conversation on some level because Selena hit us at different parts of our lives in a different way. So it's good to see you, Tania. How are you?
Definitely good. I do want to do one quick shout out though.
Always.
Lambda Theta Alpha Latin Sorority Incorporated.
Okay.
This is our Founders Month. And it was founded in 1975, first and largest Latin sorority in the nation in New Jersey. And the majority of our founding mothers are Boricua. So
absolutely.
Awesome.
I believe my friend Elvita Quiñones. Do you know Elvita? I believe that's her sorority. I believe.
No, I don't know her.
Anyway, I know a bunch of the women in your sorority.
Somebody knows somebody.
Yeah, no question about it. But sometimes I get the letters confused. But nevertheless, Tania, great to see you. So why don't we start, Dionely, with you? We'll get into the show in a second, but I want to set the stage here. Dionely, I was thinking about it. I mean, you were pretty young when Selena was popping.
Yeah.
Why don't we start with what does Selena mean to you and why does she mean so much to you? Let's start there.
Ay, Dios mío. Selena means so much to me. I was 9 years old when Selena passed away, around 9 years old. And she was just amazing. Like, I got to see her on TV when she was still alive. And she was absolutely amazing. Like, you almost felt like she was in person when you would see her on TV. And she just seemed like she was bigger than life. And she was always so humble and so amazing. So it's not like, oh, now that she passed away, now everybody loves her. No, she was super loved when she was still alive. She was amazing. She was a great role model. She was bilingual. I love that she embraced both parts of her culture, the American side and the Hispanic side, the Mexican side. So that's something that I'm living through as well. Like, I embrace the United Statesian American side and then also my Dominican side. So it's all about balance. And she did it so gracefully. So I absolutely love that about her.
So Tania, if Dionely was 9, I'm wondering if you were even alive when this was all popping. So for your generation, my friend, why is Selena such an enduring icon?
First of all, I say Selena because that's how my mom always said it.
No doubt.
We only spoke Spanish at home, so I just always heard Selena. And Selena passed away when I was a year old, literally like the week before I was supposed to turn 1 year old. But my mom loved her. Like, we grew up listening to her. And honestly, if it wasn't for my mom and how much she loved Selena, I don't think that I would have been as big of a fan of her as I am now, you know, at 26 years old. So she definitely meant a lot, not just for me, but for my mom too.
So fast forward. So let me tell you my Selena experience. So when she was at her peak in the 90s, I happened to be in college in New York. And that was the one time in my life where my roommates were Mexican American guys from San Antonio in the Valley. So at that peak, one of the things that, even though I'm an East Coast Latino guy and I didn't exactly listen to Tano music, they really introduced me to her. You know, my homies Angel and my homies Rob and these other folks and some of our other friends that actually were from Corpus Christi. And so, you know, look, Selena, she was really special. She was really special. And obviously we can debate what would have happened if she had stayed with us. She passed away way too young. But she certainly set the stage. You know, there's no Selena Gomez, there's no Demi Lovato. There probably isn't a J-Lo, and you know, because that her loss led that path and gave J-Lo that platform of playing her in the movie. Certainly in that time without her. So an incredible pioneer, just a great personality. And one of the things that I think, and we'll talk about the show in a second, but one of the things that the movie or the show or the homages that we all do for her, they're not exaggerations. She really was that special, not only because of the charisma and look. I mean, God, I still think she's. I mean, what an incredible beauty. Let's be honest about it. I mean, she was bad. But a great personality and a truly authentic person. You know, Selena wasn't going to steal your man. I can think of other celebrities that may have. She, you know what I mean? She was a genuine person and like a real person. And I think that biculturalism, that authenticity, that natural sweetness and the talent, an incredible combination. So now we fast forward. We had the movie years ago, which kicked off J-Lo's career and you know, is iconic in its own way. And now we have this Netflix series. So Dionely, when you heard that there was going to be a Netflix series, first of all, what were you expecting? And what do you think you got? Let's start there with just your overall thoughts on what were your hopes and what did you get out of what do you think about the show?
When I heard that they were going to have a Selena Netflix series, I just thought, me siento muy excited. So if anybody has seen the movie Selena, they know where that quote is from. I was just super excited and I knew it was going to be great. I didn't know exactly what to expect because I'm like, what, are they just going to play the movie in slow motion? But no, there's a lot of new information that we didn't see before. Like we got to see her basically in her caterpillar stage because we're used to seeing Selena when she was already a superstar, when she was in her butterfly stage, which I make that that analogy because on the last episode, it's not a spoiler alert, but she talks about like, hey, do you think that butterflies, they think about, oh, wow, when they were caterpillars and they couldn't fly, or are they just enjoying being a butterfly and flying? So I love that this first part, we got to see her struggle because it's like started from the bottom. Now we're here. We got to see how they actually started from the bottom, how the whole Selena becoming a super megastar was actually like a family effort. It wasn't just her by herself or her dad just pushing Selena by herself. It was the family, Los Dinos. And then she had to drop the name Los Dinos just so she could become, I guess, more like international or more appealing to the masses. Because they like compare, oh, you know, Madonna is only one name, Cher is just one name. So let's just call her Selena and drop the Dinos, but the Dinos are still going to be there. So I really like that. And we also got to see the struggle that they all went through, like Suzette playing the drums and that struggle, and then AB writing songs, that struggle, and the father struggle, like the financial issues and all that, then having to have help, like government help, you know, like food stamps and things like that struggle and all that, and conflict within the family. So it wasn't all like, oh, peachy keen.
Well, you know, it's interesting because that was one of the things that people have debated about the series. Some people like the fact you got a more family global perspective on it. And then some people are like, I don't want it to be, I just want to know about Selena. So Tania, where do you fall in it?
I'm so glad that you brought up that scene about the butterflies and I love that we're analyzing it this way because I did not catch that scene. And I love that. So I feel like I need to go back and see that scene, just that part. But I think, you know, even just thinking that people are upset that the show is called Selena, and they're mad that it has like a storyline of the family of AB, of Abraham. And in my head, I'm just thinking, I'm like, but what did you expect? Did you really expect for Selena, our queen, to have made it up to that point in her life without her family, as if, you know, their storylines weren't congruent to hers? And you know, we just have to think about like our own lives. There's no way that any of us would be where we're at if we didn't have those storylines of what our siblings or what our parents have gone through with us, what our cousins, et cetera, et cetera. And I really like that they even brought in Ricky and other folks that were also in the background, even though we really don't know those stories or those people too much. I like that they brought them up because at the end of the day, every single person in her life at a personal level was touched and impacted by her. And to think that they didn't experience some sort of trauma, even in their own individual lives, despite not being at the forefront, despite not having that microphone, you know, I think is definitely like a big miss, if anything. So I really appreciate that it is so heavy on the storylines of other people that were in her life as well. I think that's really important, and it needed to be included.
Yeah, I like the family aspect, but the fact that I'm sorry, Dionely, you were gonna say.
I was gonna say that if you watch old interviews, like Selena actually speaking, she always makes a point of like, no, it's not just me, it's my family, it's Los Dinos.
Yeah, no
Like
doubt.
it's all a family thing. It's not just me. And let me see. I forgot what else I was gonna say, but go on. It's just so much that
yeah.
I
Well, one of the things is that, which I think is a fair critique, is that it, even if you like the family, like the holistic, like it was about the family journey, it definitely is through the eyes of the dad, and so that turns off certain people. And obviously, he's a controversial figure. His relationship with the husband, the widower, and so you know, and the dad's kind of a shady kind of character at times. Let's talk about the actress that played Selena. As you mentioned to me, Tanya, in our pre-interview, nobody can do it justice. It's an impossible role. Christian Serratos got on the radar with her role in Walking Dead, Rosita. Um, well, you know, there's a lot to say here because it is sort of an impossible role to take on. What was your thoughts, Tanya, about Christian's performance and portrayal of Selena?
I think that absolutely at the end of the day, no one is going to look like our queen, Selena. No one. And I think that it's almost like unimaginable and unthinkable to think, right, that somebody else could fill those shoes and do it justice, with that pressure, with that honor and that responsibility. And I think that she, at the end of the day, did a great job. Even if Christian Serratos, you know, I know that a lot of folks are really upset, that they feel that the casting has been whitewashed, and they feel that, you know, they really didn't do
about that.
in terms of finding, right, somebody that would have more appropriately fit the role. But I think even if Christian Serratos would not have taken this opportunity, the next person would have absolutely taken the opportunity, and people would have still found something to say about the next person and the next person. Because like I said, it's unimaginable to think that somebody could fill those shoes of Selena. And if they could, they'd probably be Selena themselves.
You know, one thing I wanted to give a shout out to my wife, Michelle, because her issue is that, first of all, she's a big Walking Dead fan. She's like a humongous. She loves anything with a zombie and a vampire in it. My wife is down.
I love The Walking Dead.
Yeah, no, you two besties. And so she wasn't big on her on the show. She was so excited. Wow, they have a prominent Latina character. But she just doesn't like her style. And she said her issue, and I've heard it from other women, other people, is that she's, you know, well, some people just don't think she's a good actress, period. I've heard that. But they just don't think she has the energy, the pizzazz, the sex appeal, something missing. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, J-Lo at that point in her career wasn't the greatest actress in the world, but J-Lo has that kind of star power. So I think that made up for a lot of other maybe shortcomings of hers at that point in her life. But to that point, Dionely's been on this point because, and there's been discussions about it. I actually made some comments that I had to kind of think about, just kind of seeing the promotional photos and then actually seeing the show. So Dionely shared some pictures with me. There's been some controversy about people thinking Christian don't look like her. She's lighter skinned than her. Her hair isn't right. So I'm going to show a picture that Dionely shared with us earlier, and I want you to comment on that part of the phenomenon, because I know this has been a big pet peeve of yours. So then let's show this picture that you showed me. So, and people can hear us, Dionely. So talk to us about talk to us.
Well, it's the 80s. You can show the different pictures because it's just the 80s. It's just a like side-by-side comparison. It's the 80s. Like, we're so used to seeing her, like I said earlier, her butterfly stage, where she had the long black hair, and she would always be changing her hair because she didn't know who she was yet. Like, she was just growing up. She was a teenager back then. She was a singer since she was a little girl. And we have to remember also, it's not a documentary. It's not going to be as much as we want to actually see Selena. It's not. And it's kind of upsetting to me that I feel like it's us Latinos that are the most critical about our own content. Like, if other people from other cultures are like, oh, well, they don't even like it, why should I even watch it? You know what I mean? So we got to be more accepting of what we have. I mean, we have a Selena series, a Mexican-American series on Netflix. And
number one series on Netflix right now.
Right.
Number
one.
I
think too, I think another issue that comes up is that first of all, I'm glad you brought up those two pictures, because a lot of folks really like to see, you know, the mystified and the famous and the glorified version of the Selena that, you know, we all know and love, right? But I think that this brings up an issue that people don't want to see the reality of what it took for Selena to become who she became. And I think even the J-Lo movie, I think still, you know, feeds into that portrayal of like the goddess that she became for us, right? But the reality is she was a child and she was a teenager who did not get to live a regular child and teenager life. And so I think what this series does is that it does justice to those beginnings, those humble beginnings of Selena. And sure, it's season 1. She is not there yet. And I don't think she was meant to get there yet in one season. So I'm really, really glad that you've been bringing that up, Dionely, about how this isn't about seeing her in her final stage. This really is about seeing her growth.
And that's very similar to other child celebrities, child entertainers, child actors. I mean, that's kind of part of the deal. Ray Velez, a great part of the show, and one of the people that really inspired us to do this episode. Selena was outgoing and out a copy of No One, super original. Ray knows what he's talking about. So on the marketing of the show, what I think I've determined is that on the show, Christian obviously doesn't look exactly like her, but not too bad. Actually, the more I watched it, actually they did a pretty good job, especially with the hair and the other things. And her skin tone is actually closer to Selena's but the marketing of it, a lot of times the marketing photos are lighter. So that's an interesting dynamic. And obviously that's part of her appeal, that she was very ethnic Latina in terms of hair texture, color, body type. You know, she was a real, lips, she was a Latina, blanquita about her. And that's part of the appeal, because she was very relatable to everybody. Caribbean, she had a very pan-Latina look, like every ethnic group kind of could relate to someone that looked like that. And, and she was bicultural, like you said, Dionely. Give us another thought, Dionely, about the Selena Netflix series.
That another criticism that I've heard is that, it moves so slow, like not enough is happening. But it's like the Wonder Years. Do you remember that show, The Wonder Years? Like, it's not a whole bunch of drama, this and that is going up. Like, we're seeing the struggle. Like, and she gives a lot of pointers too throughout the movie. Like, for people who want to be artists, like something he would always say is like, oh, don't worry so much about the money, which that could be one criticism against the dad, is like, oh, why is he always saying to worry about the money? That'll come later. And there are like a few parts that I didn't like the dad so much. So it's not like it's through his point of view and he's painting himself as a saint. Like, there's a lot of parts where I'm just like, I can't believe he did that. Like,
he's keeping it real. He's keeping it honest about what it took.
Like, when I don't know if I could give like stuff away, like spoilers, but there's a lot of parts in the series where Abraham's not painted in a good light. And also the part of the criticism where, she doesn't have the sex appeal. Understand that in the first season, she should not have sex appeal. She's a teenager. So stop expecting the teenager to have sex appeal. And she was a family-oriented person. So She's not supposed to have sex appeal. And throughout the series, I saw her growth too, like looking more like what we got to know her as a superstar. So I cannot wait to see this next season. I'm excited. I've already watched it 3 times.
That's fantastic.
I'm watching it again.
I think too, on the point of the parents and Abraham, one, I have a feeling we're going to see more of the mom play a bigger role in season 2, because I think that is another criticism, right? That Abraham got such a big light, but the mom did not. And but I do remember there were scenes, and I don't want to give off too much, but there were scenes where she was bringing up little hints like, Abraham, let's get her a bodyguard, you know, like let's think about her safety. And we all know the tragedy that is going to progress into season 2, right? So if mom is already thinking about safety from day one, when she barely was having, you know, her first couple big concerts, what does this mean for mom as her story progresses, as Selena continues to get bigger and bigger? And I think another thing too, when it comes to some of the criticism, when it comes to the show, I've also heard that folks are upset that this may be a way to use Selena's life and legacy as a way for profit. And I think about their family specifically. We talk a lot about giving grace to people as they're grieving, but I don't think that process of grieving and that trauma, that lived trauma that they went through, is probably ever gonna go away. I don't know what it's like to lose a sibling or a daughter. And I think that I can't find myself in a place where I would criticize the family if this is a part of their grieving process in order to bring honor, you know, to her life. And if I was her sibling, if I was one of Selena's siblings, I would absolutely have all hands on deck on this project, because if anyone's going to bring Selena's life to a screen, it better be done the right way. So I definitely want to, you know, make sure that as audience members, we even think about how we see the grieving process of their family and remember that this is their personal life, and this is their sibling or their daughter. And it means something different for them than it does for us.
No, and the reality is somebody's going to make the money off that legacy. So it should be the fam, you know, because they would have had a lot more money and resources if she had stayed alive. I mean, let's be honest about it. And I think it is, it's appropriate that whatever you think about it. And I think the quality of it, I hope the second season they put more of a budget into it, because it definitely didn't have the kind of resources that some of the higher end, you know, the higher end prestige television series get. That was the one thing I said, wow, you could tell they nickel nine us a little bit. But so I hope that the next season gets more resources to just do it with a higher production value, because it deserves it. I mean, Selena's an American icon, a Latina icon. And look, it's #1 on Netflix. I mean, there's obviously a lot of interest in her legacy. And look, you two were babies, and you still cared a lot about her, and her legacy lives on. Dionely, any final thoughts about Selena? Then I wanted to ask Tania about our mutual the other person we fan about a lot, Don Benito himself, Bad Bunny, and how much we've listened to his new CD.
I just feel like if we want Netflix to put more money into the next season of Selena, the series, we need to be more positive with the reviews that we're giving it. Like, we need to just realize that it's bigger than just our opinion. Like, they're looking. So we need to be more supportive, and I can't wait. I can't wait for the next season. It's going to be amazing.
Two things that we'll get into the Bad Bunny stuff, Tania. Want to give my boy Ray Velez a lot of love. The movie focused on Selena, but the series is focused on the family and how it contributed to Selena's life. Ray got a lot to say. The series gave us viewers in-depth knowledge of what the family went through and how they were overcoming their challenges as a family. You know, part of the pace is that these people were from exurban Texas. These are not people from New York or LA, you know, a little bit of a different lifestyle. And so I think that gives us the window into that type of Latino community, you know, so I think there was something to that as well. A little different vibe. And then it's so interesting, which segues into the Bad Bunny conversation, because these are English-speaking Latinos that were forced to do music in Spanish for the marketing. And now this is a Spanish-speaking artist who's now the biggest artist, not only amongst U.S. Latinos, but throughout the world. So the cross-cultural piece where we're crossing over, crossing back, and going back and forth is really interesting. Tania, how much have you listened to my man's new album, El Último Tour del Mundo? It is I mean, his newest.
Honestly, okay, so I'm gonna be transparent. I'm in Alaska. I'm out here by myself. And it's not like I even got like any friends remotely near me, right? I'm not originally from here. I just happened to be here because of 2020. But I think what Bad Bunny gave us in this year, well, first of all, congratulations to him because he has the first Spanish language album to hit #1 on Billboard 200 charts. And I love it. Honestly, I think it's way more mellow than his usual music. When I think about Bad Bunny, I think about going out to the club with my friends and, having a drink and just doing that. Right? Exactly. But I think what this album does, it hits different. You can listen to it by yourself in your living room. Even honestly, as you're meditating, I've actually listened to it as I'm meditating. He legit gave us a album for the times. And I think when in the future, when we look back on COVID, when we look back on 2020, and we actually are going to examine how the pandemic even showed itself through art, we're going to think about Bad Bunny's album because he made music for us in our living rooms. He knew where we were. He brought us concerts via YouTube, on a bus, in the streets of New York, where so many people have been hit hard.
Most of his Dominican fans, you know that, Dionely. He was going through all those Dominican neighborhoods in the Bronx and uptown. That was for y'all people. Yeah, I mean, he knows how much y'all mean to.
He loves Dominicans. He gives us a lot of love.
Absolutely. No, and to your point, Tanya, and we're going to do a whole other show about Bad Bunny soon. But what's so interesting, and look, and I grew up, I grew up when U.S. hip hop was birthed, and I'm in it up to my eyeballs. And my brother's part of that tradition as a hip hop artist has traveled all over the world, strictly English, hardcore, street, Philly stuff. And so seeing the parallels, so there's great artists, and I'll just say kind of in the rap world, just for example, there's great artists that are great in the genre. Then there's special artists, the truly greats, that move the culture and move their fan base forward with them. So Bad Bunny is not just like the best in the game, but he's changing the game. Because what I think, to your point, Tanya, what this album is doing, his new music is doing, is maturing his audience. And where he's pushing us to go along on his personal journey and his artistic journey. So y'all need to catch up. And I think about like Jay-Z. Jay-Z was wearing basketball jerseys. So everybody wore basketball jerseys. Then one day Jay-Z, as my brother would share his perspectives, he's wearing, suits, and now he's a business guy and he's about flossing, and then everybody changed their game and it became like a different thing. So the truly greats, we have to move with them. Prince was that way. He was always challenging us. So I got to give Bad Bunny a lot of love. The quarantine piece, which he was pretty transparent about, and made both these albums basically, in quarantine. So much respect to him. As we wrap this up, thank you so much, Tanya. Appreciate you. Enjoy the hinterland where you are. I'm sure it'll be. So you actually might see real reindeer where you're at in Alaska. That's so adorable.
I've seen a ton of reindeer out here. But let me say one thing real quick before we're done with Benito. So I just want to say, as much as I love his music, I also want, as a fan, I want him to think critically about wearing do-rags, styling his hair in braids. As much as we love the music, I just want him to think critically about whether these are trends for him or if he's on the lines of cultural appropriation.
I agree.
Because it should not be a trend if it's that route. And so, as a fan, I just really want him to think critically. And on Selena, as a Salvi myself, Central American, I think that Hollywood has a long way to go. I'm really happy with what Selena has done, but I'm here to see Central American stories. I'm here to see the Latino stories. I'm here to see way more than the tip of the iceberg. So I think all these things that we, are really, all these artists and art that's coming out that we love, it always has room for improvement and for growth. So I think that's also, worth mentioning.
Tanya, well said. That's why I bring on as many El Salvadorans as possible. Somebody got to represent for y'all, no doubt. With respect to Dr. Patricia Campos, who's on the show, and my great friend out in Vegas, Marco Rauda, all my Salvadorans, you know how much I love of all my Central American people. Dionely, you get the final word, my friend, on this edition of Bomba Live Found in Translation. This was a lot of fun.
Just that we all need to be more supportive of each other as Latinos and not be so overly critical, because we already have other groups of people, being critical against us. And we need to be more supportive and not just wait for other people from other cultures to put us up where we need to be. Like, we need to come together and have us be where we need to be. I think we have enough people in power to do that.
No doubt about it. We got to keep supporting each other, and that's why we have these platforms. Dionely, Aprendiz Live, when are you still doing the show so people know when to check you out on your podcast?
Oh, everybody, I invite you all to follow me on my social media platforms, Dionely TC, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Aprendiz Live is on Sundays, and I also do a show on Fridays. It's about identifying, surviving, and overcoming emotional and psychological abuse. And that's on Fridays. That's Luz de Faros, is all on my social media platform.
Thank you, family. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, everybody.
Fuego, que fuego.